Good morning and welcome to NFTs Live. I'm your host, Tyler D. It is Friday, December 10th, and I'm joined this morning by my main man, SkyHook. Sky, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Good to see you. Great show last night on Lucky Trader. It was fun watching you on with the guys in the lounge. Enjoyed that. But no, ready to talk an action-packed show today.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well. It was a great preview for some topics that we're going to cover here today. And like you said, we have a lot to cover. So on the docket for today, we're going to start top news, Xcopy and Real Ross U, and some massive sales on Super Rare. We're going to talk genie sweeps popping the market right now. Hit Punk4156 drama. We have to cover it. Then we're going to get into our market update, what's trending, looking at the Lucky Trader 7-day. We're going to talk Alpha Centauri's big rug from this week, talk blue chips and the WGMI board. We're going to talk about Gazer's success in art blocks and maybe a letdown with Tyler Hobbs and Incomplete Control. Then we're going to talk sports NFTs, a big week for them, and some brands getting into the NFT space. And then we're going to end with some upcoming drops. A lot to cover. We're going to go through it quickly. Let's start. All right, top news story for the day. We're going to start with Xcopy setting a new record with right click and save as guy selling to Cosimo de Medici for 1,600 ETH, $7 million here just 2 days ago. Thinking about this pickup here, this is in the collector circles in Xcopy Grail. Absolutely. It's from 3 years ago. It's one of the perfect memes of NFT culture. It's the very first argument you get for anyone who's skeptical of NFTs. It's in his tagline, why would I buy it when I can right click and save as? What I think is so interesting about this is this piece was created 3 years ago. To have the foresight that this would be, still such a relevant question that we get. A couple of quick takeaways. Cosmo cementing his place as a top collector, building a museum-ready collection already. And then Xcopy, to me, Xcopy is the GOAT in crypto art. We've got Murat Pak and Beeple who have outsold him here this year. But when I think about crypto art and Super Rare, it starts and ends with Xcopy for me. So big week for him. But another huge sale just hours later. So the Ross Ulbricht Genesis collection, you see the image here, graphite pencil drawings created in prison. We won't go into the full story here, but been in prison, childhood to teen. A lot of folks are actively working on trying to free him. This piece sold for 1,446 ETH. I believe this went to the Pleaser DAO, Free Ross DAO.
Free Ross. Yep. Ross DAO got it. Yeah. They had raised like 2,500 ETH in advance of it to make sure.
Just an insane raise in just a few days. And I think that's my primary takeaway. So clearly there's a lot of eyes on Free Ross here and this movement. And some of the proceeds are going to good causes here. But I think the bigger takeaway is the power of these DAOs and how quickly they can spin up this amount of ETH money to be able to be power players in these auctions. So I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of this DAO action. That's our top story. Sky, it was a big week for genie sweeps. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So for those that aren't familiar with Genie, it has basically been a tool created where you can basically handpick, like in a shopping cart, and add in all of the NFTs you'd like to purchase. And you'll pay still the gas basically for all of those transactions, but it wouldn't be having to go one by one and clicking and taking you an hour to potentially buy, 15, 20 NFTs. It can do it in a snap of a fingers and one transaction. And we are seeing massive floor sweeps across some of the bigger projects. One wallet specifically highlighted here, Giron, who's great on Twitter. I think his name is Sure Block Nodes, which is perfect for his work that he does. But Giron really studies this. You can see that originally it would have been, I think on Wednesday, there was a sweep of World of Women, the NFT that has got a big impact on the floor, just a huge impact of having somebody come in with a ton of ETH the day before, 445 ETH. And then there was Loot, the original Loot project, Loot for Adventures, that was swept for 233 ETH. That bought them 71 loots in a single transaction. So, you go from a floor that's mid twos to all of a sudden 4 ETH in the snap of a fingers in one transaction. So being able to study where these are, you can't really see them coming necessarily, but you can see the instant impact to catch momentum potentially. Those are going to happen. Pranksy swept a bunch of Wizard and Dragons over the last week. We've seen some mini toad sweeps here and there. So I think Genie is something that is definitely impacting the market.
I have seen there are some sharps who have figured out a way to, I wouldn't say front run, but they've at least been able to identify some of these sweeps. And some of these sweeps are happening in like 2 or 3 different steps, and they're trying to get in between. So there's some absolute alpha there if you're able to do it. But this is the most exciting tool in NFTs right now. I don't think any Discord gets more excited than when a Genie sweep happens. And I'm excited to see a lot more of these here in the near future. All right, third story of the day. We got to talk about the Punk4156 drama and probably put a nail in it. I think this is going to be the end of the story. So we talked about on Tuesday's show, he famously sold off his almost entire bag of CryptoPunks. He netted about 28 million selling 20 plus punks at below market price, which kind of caused a storm in Punk Twitter, Punk Discords. But he held on to his namesake PFP. Well, he Dutch auctioned off that PFP yesterday very quickly and in a pretty abbreviated Dutch auction. So he started the auction out, and we can even see it here in the sales history on the Larva Labs page. Started it out at 4156, the namesake, then 3500. I'm gonna say 30 minutes later, 3000 ETH, 30 minutes after that. And then he quickly brought it down to 2,500 ETH. He actually let it sit there for a bit, and then it was purchased at 2,500 ETH, which is the third all-time high Punk sale in ETH terms, the number one US dollar all-time sale that we now have seen. It was a $10 million sale. There's a good amount to unpack. We won't go through the whole thing right now. First, the buyer immediately relisted it for 4156.
That was great. That was great.
A lot of people think, Punk 4156 acted too quickly, too hastily, left a lot of money on the table. This is a real test. If this Punk ape does sell for 4156 in the next few weeks, then clearly he left 1,500 ETH or so on the table. But he wanted to make a statement. He wanted a fast exit from the project, and he did it. It's an end of an era for sure. We've seen some market impacts already. First off, Punk derivatives have been going wild. So the Funks, which is the flip punks, they actually got kicked off OpenSea. They started their own marketplace. Those are up to like a 2 ETH floor. We've seen sales in the top end of 70, 90 ETH from some fairly big names. And then there's another one called Zunks. It's another derivative that's been going off as well. I think what's been the strangest for me, Sky, will be interesting for your take on this, has been some of the other Punk owners' reaction. And it's been very salty and negative in general. And I feel like this could have been a rallying moment for Punks. This is the all-time high sale in US dollars, but it's not turning into a bull event. It actually seems like more of a bear event. So were you surprised, or what's been your take?
Yeah, I think the whole chase of everything has been pretty surprising to me. I think being in the community, in the NFT community as a whole, it always been a chase to get a Punk. That is almost everyone's grail list. I remember doing our first couple of shows and having, of course, that being the peak of what you could try to get to. And that sentiment, has not really been the same since we've seen some of the competition of top tier projects. Yeah, I mean, you would think a 2,500 ETH sale is massive. And the way it went down, of course, I think was just not the OG Punks aren't happy clearly with what 4156 did. So celebrating it basically is, kind of complimenting the way he did about it. So I don't know if I would expect them to react that way, but I think the problem that I see is I just sitting kind of on the edge of the fence, thinking some type of floor sweep activity, a move to create big momentum around the project with a lot of the things you said, was that feels to be more realistic to me. But I just don't know, man. It's a weird time in Punkland.
It is. And it actually tees up my next question for you quite nicely. Let's go ahead and pull up the Lucky Trader board and get into our market update. Top two on the board, Punks and Apes. Punks, right on the back of that 2,500 ETH sale. And of course, all of Punk 4156's sales from last weekend are still included in this number, 13K ETH. The floor sitting at 71.6. Bored Apes, second on the board, 8,400 ETH. Strong week for them. The floor is at 52.88, up after that genie sweep. They're getting close. What I asked Brett Richey on the show on Tuesday about the flippening. What's your take? Do you think that we're going to see a flippening here in the near future?
So I think there can be a Titan squeeze over the next couple of weeks, a little bit more. The reason is, so I've been constantly thinking about taxes, as we lead up to the end of the year. I think that's a hot topic. And one thing I'm trying to identify is projects in which people are going to force sell off things towards the end of the year and take a harvest. We saw Punks get to 120 ETH floor. Yep. Right. So I know there was a great chart posted yesterday. I'll pull up or I'll mention who at least tweeted it yesterday, seeing some of those average buy-ins. It was by punkapestats.eth, punk9059, saying that, a good amount of these punks have just never been sold since mint. However, a good amount of those punks also did have a decent amount of activity, high 90s, in the low hundreds. A lot of purchases where they're down 25, 30, 40% maybe on some of these buys. And if it's people that have that money and have been in the NFT space, do they want to just harvest it, get out and take it? Or on the reverse side, and why often people kind of make fault with some of the ape owners, is a lot of them, it's their first big win in NFTs. So they're not sitting there staring at something that's going to be a tax harvest. If they were to sell it, it's going to be really hitting their bottom line from a huge gain. So I think it's very less likely people are going to sell off punks or sell off apes in the next lead up at the end of the year, when punks might be something that have to be harvested for some people. So I think that can really tighten. I don't want to be the one to put my neck out there and say we're going to see a Q1 flip. I don't know. I think people are too defensive of what they own in punks to really let that happen in the short term. But I think it's going to tighten up in the end of December.
I like it. That's actually the first argument I've heard with the tax loss harvesting as a driving force, and that actually makes a ton of sense. I think I'm with you. I think when people talked about the flipping, the spirit of it is apes rising in floor price and passing where punks are or have been. I think the more likely scenario, if that happens, is the punk floor dropping, and tax loss harvesting over the next 3 weeks absolutely could be a driver for that. I don't know if it's quite as satisfying, for the ape owners, if that's the way that it happens. But there's also going to be a point the floor gets low enough, we're going to see the whale action.
Yep.
And just to save it, but
for sure
we'll be watching. Rounding out the rest of the board, I feel like we've already talked about a good amount of this across this week, so I'm not going to dive in deep. But there's a little bit of a trend. I do want to get your thoughts on this, guy. So Ape Kids Club, third on the board, almost 5,000 ETH. Cute project. It's got the Ape brand tied to it. We've got Clone X from Artifact, a big name brand. They are holding steady, slowly rising, 3.86 floor on solid volume in a very lengthy pre-reveal process. Then we've got Crypto Bull Society, one that kind of came out of nowhere. The floor got into the high threes. It's now back down a bit to 2.88 with 3,500 ETH volume. So I think my question for you is this a game of hot potato on new projects? Is this indicative of a new buyer pool coming and kind of putting their foot down on products that they like and want to invest in? Or is it a combination of the two? Kind of what's your reaction to some of this market action we've seen?
I resonate with your take last night on the lounge. I thought that was a very wise take, thinking of the incoming people to the market, wanting to get a piece of a pie to potentially a larger name project, but that coming through NFTs, not tokenomics, coming through derivatives or the same kind of name word play or picture word play. And Ape Kids Club is just like that. It's something where, the low cost of, I think it was 0.3 to mint, and low cost is relative, versus, floors of things, but entry price to get into one of those projects versus, coming in for even, a dog or a mutant, if you want to get a part of the ape community. In that sense, you're still paying 3, 4, 5x. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a riskier game to play, just because it seems like they're seemingly endless. There's a new one coming every single day. I mean, you go through these lists, there's 4, 5, 6 different ape named ones. But I can see people kind of resonating if it's got enough behind it. Not something I haven't been playing as much, but I've missed out on profits because of it.
Yeah, I'm similar. I've been sitting on the sidelines, but then watching these projects take off. So it's caught my attention, and I'm actively monitoring. So I won't go through the rest of the board. The last project I want to highlight quickly is World Wide Web Land, 1,200 ETH this week. The floor has been steadily rising. It's a metaverse play. It's virtual apartments. They've got a game tied to it. You can use any of your own PFPs in the ecosystem. I like this one a lot. I like what we're seeing in the market, and I'm definitely keeping a close eye on this one. All right, that's our market update. Let's get into one of ones. So just going to highlight one piece here this week, since we already touched on the headliners. Alpha Centauri Kid, a bit of a shocking play here. I know I was surprised. So he was involved in a Christie's auction tied with OpenSea. And in the NFT Now team, I think was a part of this as well. So the piece, I'm blanking on the name of it. It's Girl with a Piano or something very similar. And it's a Pepe. He's holding this red piano. It's got some music. It's an animated piece. It lasts about 60 seconds. Well, Punk4156 bought the piece. After the sale, ACK changes the metadata, and the piano changes into the words "sorry," and essentially rugs the art. I wasn't expecting this. What was your reaction to this one, Sky?
I loved it because it's ACK's like kind of brand a little edgy, likes to play with fire and bring out some really cool things, and has a really, strong collection base where people, it was a risky move that he could take, but the buyer pool he has might almost appreciate some things like that and almost build to his legacy. I mean, he talks about his muse all the time. It's his motivation, to build. And that's technically, it was the muse holding the piano. And then after he made the move and changed the metadata to have the Pepe in there, it's like, hey, nobody can buy my muse. That is what really gets me going. So the fact that you even thought you could buy something of that, that's on you for thinking it. So it was the Banksy shredding type of thing. If you compare it to the physical art world, where after selling his piece for a certain amount, it was shredded, and then obviously we know what happened in the long term for that. So I think it was just a really mind-blowing type of thing to do when he's on such a big stage. So it takes some big cojones to make that move.
I love it too. I didn't really know what to think right afterwards, but it's definitely growing on me, the move. And ACK, he's got an edge to him. That is a fact. But he is absolutely a rising star in this market, and excited to see what is to come for him. All right, notable sales. I'm going to put those in the show notes. I want us to keep moving because we still have a lot to cover. Let's quickly hit on the blue chip PFPs. We're going to show some floors here from WGMI. Let me here. Okay. So we touched on Punks. They actually got passed by the Genesis Kongs, who are up at 77 ETH floor here, now top of the board. For those who are familiar or not familiar with WGMI, they actually added a 30-day change column here, which I really like. It gives a much better picture of how the project is actually trending versus just the 1 day and 7 day views. So kudos to WGMI for that ad. We talked about Punks and Apes, just quickly touching down the rest of the board here. So Cool Cats are holding steady, 7.3 floor, pretty much even on the week. Mutant 6-3, pretty much even on the week as well. Gutter Cat Gangs steady at 4. And then we've got the Cryptodes sitting at 3.5. We saw people thought Punk4156 was going to sweep the Toads. We saw some buying action yesterday in thinking that was going to happen. It never did, or it hasn't yet. And the floor has since dipped back a little bit, but that'll be a project to watch here this weekend as well. And then some action in Punk's Comics. So that floor ripped up a bit yesterday in advance of the Punk's Comic 2 issue that dropped here this morning. It sold out in a massive gas war. And in just about probably 20 minutes or so, we sold about a 10K supply. So I think 590 holders, which is not great. It was 20 per transaction. So we're going to see a lot of secondary on that. We've got an upcoming drop here in a week as well. So that will be an interesting floor to continue to watch. But the Pixel Vault team, they continue to deliver. That is a fact. Let's move into art blocks quickly. Then I want to save some time at the end to talk about our upcoming drops and sports NFTs. So starting with Gazers has had a great week. I talked about it on Lucky Trader last night in exhaustion. So I'll let folks view that show if you want the deep dive on Gazers, but it minted out at 0.25. We saw the secondary rise all the way up to the mid threes. It's sitting at 3.3 here this morning. We've since seen multiple art blocks projects mint out, which is a new trend. As folks have been following the market, we've seen all the projects just sitting for weeks on the art blocks page. But we've seen 2 factory projects mint out. We've seen a playground drop from Darian Brito yesterday that was very well received, minted out at the 0.5 level in a gas war. So all signs positive. Then last night, highly anticipated second project from Tyler Hobbs, the creator of Fidenzas, known as the Grail art block set, highest demand. We saw the floor for Fidenzas get to 208. He dropped his second project, Incomplete Control. We can start to see some of the mints here on the art blocks page. And as we scroll through these, I don't think anyone's really blown away by the art on these. What has been your reaction to what we've seen from Incomplete Control so far, Sky?
I don't have the greatest eye when it comes to art. I think I buy a lot on market sentiment, and I think the market sentiment is not rallying around the price at which these went at. The Dutch auction the last rung was 30 ETH that it sold out at. It was a gas war at 30 ETH to get through. You compare them to other projects that you've seen, and people probably aren't as on board with what the result is. Now, Hobbs obviously has built such a legacy around what he is. So is that enough to overcome people not, in love with the art as much? Potentially. But yeah, I think people aren't as happy with the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they potentially spent.
Yeah, and that's outside of Tyler Hobbs's control, right? What we saw in the secondary. But I mean, that floor got up to 100, I think, above 100. We saw plenty of buys like in the 90s. Grailer's DAO spun up NFTs to crowd raise money to buy. I think they bought 9 of these Incomplete Controls pre-reveal. Maybe folks were overzealous, right? I think that's part of the sentiment. But don't pay $300,000 or $400,000 for something you haven't seen yet. If you feel like you may not be happy with the outcome. So it'd be interesting to watch this one play out. The rest of the art blocks are still trending down a bit. We have seen a few surge back up, but we'll post the floors in the show notes. I want to move into sports NFTs. So the story of the day is Top Shot's second project, NFL All Day. It's dropping. Sky, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, congrats to those that got picked to be in the beta. Unfortunately, I didn't make the cut. A little disappointed because I've grinded my collector score, which feels like for months now, but it's part of the game. And I think I was right about 900 to 1,000 people that ended up getting through to the early beta stages. I think there's 1, if not 2 pack drops today, a common pack and then a rare pack, $49 and then $249. 1 max for those buyers. It's great. I'm glad they're delivering on it. it's a huge drop for them to be, just super successful with. Like Lou mentioned last night, if there's any glitches to this on their, kickoff, it's just something that everyone's going to bring back the same narrative with Top Shot. So I'm really hoping it's going well. They also aren't, this was very interesting. The first rookie moment ever on the site. They just announced it is going to be Presley Harvin the third, which people, maybe not familiar with, he's a punter. So not even like going, something where it might be the biggest player out there. Like they're doing something a little bit interesting here. So excited to see how it goes, and best of luck, everyone ripping packs.
Yeah, excited to see how this one goes. And as you mentioned, if there's anything negative with the drop, it's going to be a lot of fun on the timeline. But I'm excited for this. I'll be buying packs. I wish I would have gotten into the beta, and I did not. So a little bit salty, but I can get past it. Not the only sports news from the week. So Tom Brady dropped on Autograph yesterday, and then DraftKings also announces a collab with the NFL to launch a gamified NFT collection on their DK marketplace to come. So look out for that in the sports NFT space. Entertainment, going to be a new recurring segment on our show as more and more brands are getting into NFTs. So Zara launching an NFT collection called Ad X Zara. It's closed for your metaverse avatar, and it's on a different app called Zepeto. So take a look at that if you're interested in it. We'll post it in the show links. And then White Castle came out of nowhere, made a big splash in NFT Twitter, so much so that I want to quickly highlight it. So they bought a CHAM is what they're known as in NFT Twitter slang. It's a Salobot NFT from Art Blocks. It's got a cult following that Vincent Van Gogh really started in Starry Night, but these things are 6.5 ETH floor. So, White Castle put some money, into this initial investment. They also registered the ENS domain White Castle Official. So I like this come out party for White Castle quite a bit. It shows some humor. It shows some research and understanding the NFT marketplace and what's trendy, what's the right, NFT for them. And then the ENS domain was really topped it off. So that was great to see.
Two quick things on White Castle. I saw a hilarious tweet yesterday from the owner who had whitecastle.eth as their ENS. So they're like, imagine sitting on this for 2 years and then they go make an official whitecastle.ens. So make sure you put that in your calculations if you're targeting a company. Other thing is the rumors are that we've talked about the family of Mooks in the past, Doodle Labs, that this is the same artist that there's going to be a collaboration with in their next drop, Che Yu Wu. So CHAM family might be expanding a little bit more.
Great call outs. And man, pour one out for whitecastle.eth. What a miss. But let's compare and contrast that to a few other brands who didn't do it quite as well. I love this tweet from comfydevil.eth. I'm going to show it here. Pepsi, Meta, and Budweiser are completing their first assignments of how to NFT corporate trading. Please be kind. So Pepsi came out. They're launching an NFT. They tweeted about it. And then these brands got in their comments really quickly. Meta saying, this is going to look great in the metaverse. Pepsi, you know it, friend. Beer.eth. Welcome, brand friend. We all gonna make it. Thanks, friend. We all gonna make it. It's cringe. I'm cringing as I read it right here. Clearly, the social media managers spent tens of minutes combing through NFT Twitter slang to grasp the terminology here. So, hats off to them for the deep research that they did. Hopefully, we see some improvement over time. But the brands are here, and we gotta get used to it. All right, let's last segment for today. I do want to touch on some upcoming drops because we've got a lengthy list. I know a couple on your radar, Sky. One is the Proof Collective. Do you want to give us just a quick overview of that?
Yeah, so Proof Collective is going the route of some of these private discords that are tokenized that have found a lot of success. And this one is led by Kevin Rose. For those that aren't familiar, you can find him at KRO. Kevin is as much of an OG in Web 2 and Web 3 as you really can get. I would highly recommend listening to the podcast last week he did with Bankless. Just a phenomenal kind of history and what they're kind of predicting at the future, as Kevin Rose is just on the cutting edge of these next steps as we enter into the Web 3 world. But he's going to offer a tokenized Discord up to 1,000 members. And it's, Kevin is as big as it probably gets out there of anybody who's done this before. So I'm sure it's going to be a healthy price. The Dutch auction starts at 5 ETH. So I'm curious where it's going to go at. Last rung is just 0.5, but you're going to see some big time names because Kevin is promising not any exact utility, but the fact that he's going to try dozens of different ideas over the next 3 years to connect with artists, to try these different things that really could bring some big utility to the owners there. So I think that's one on my radar. The second one is Flamingo DAO, who has made, I know you've noted them quite a bit, have made some hits into some bigger art blocks projects in the past, being able to collect a good amount of certain collections. Well, they are now going to have their first drop under their umbrella. So keep an idea or keep a watch on that as we see these kind of spin-offs of art blocks in a sense of working on their first, Braindrops drop was, an hour ago. Those type of things are going to get more and more popular, and with the backing they have can be very successful.
It's definitely a running trend. It's going to be a lot to keep track of. And I've got another new platform to talk about in my upcoming drop list here. So Async Art is launching next week. They've got a pre-sale starting Monday, public sale Wednesday, and it could not be bigger headliners. So they've got Xcopy, Coldy, and a lot of money. Coldy and a lot of money, for those who aren't as familiar. We don't talk about them quite as much on the show. They're also two OG crypto artists, command real premiums on Super Rare. They're doing larger edition sets here. I want to say out of 666, at 0.25 price. Especially that's for the Xcopy specifically. The other artist 1,000 at 0.2. I think we're going to see incredible demand for these. So set your alerts for that one. Another one. This is for my Toads backers. I love the Toads. So there's a cool derivative project launching tomorrow. It's called Croaks. I saw this one. I kind of went in, one ear out the other, and then I started seeing more and more of the art. I like it quite a bit. It's got a little bit of those Ape Kids Club vibe. 3D, metaverse, avatar, PFP products are really hot right now.
Yep.
So I'm going to be minting this one. I haven't decided yet how many. It's a 0.069 mint. So it's got a price tag on it, right? It's definitely not a free mint like we saw for the crypto flies, but this is absolutely one I'll be watching in a long list of upcoming drops this weekend.
Absolutely.
Sky, we covered a lot. Anything else on your mind here this morning?
No, I mean, we probably could go for another hour or 2 hours just chatting away. I think it's getting time of the year again where minting is getting hot again. We're seeing a lot new and more quality projects, I feel, coming out, so good to pay attention to those. Again, the tax situation is going to be very interesting as the rest of the year closes up. So going to be watching that, but no, just keeping excited.
I love it. I guess one closing tidbit of alpha for our listeners. I checked in on the OpenSea data here this morning. We're trending to a $3 billion month, which is just 10% off the highs. So you can kiss the bear market goodbye. We are seeing active volume in our marketplaces. So it is a good time to be back in NFTs. ETH is dropping a bit as well. So if it stabilizes, who knows? We could be in for a real run up. But folks, that's our show for today. SkyHook, thank you for joining me this morning. It's been awesome. As always, thanks to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in. We'll be back on Tuesday to recap the weekend in NFTs. Till then, stay safe in those NFT streets. Goodbye.